Fellas, in this video we're going to be going over why we don't have a definite UFC GOAT. Now, a lot of you are going to say that, people like Jon Jones, GSP, you might have your own GOAT list, but in reality, there's a reason why there's such a big debate for who's the greatest of all time is compared to other sports, where in a lot of other sports, it's kind of obviously it's between person A or person B, or sometimes there's a complete definite GOAT, whereas in the UFC, there isn't a definite GOAT. Now, a lot of you are going to be saying there is, but we're going to be going over why there isn't in this video. Please let me know who you personally think is the greatest of all time, but we're going to be talking about why every single fighter who's classed as the GOAT can't really be the GOAT. Now, we're going to start off with Jon Jones. Most people would say that Jon Jones is the greatest of all time. First of all, he's undefeated. And I'm not going to count close fights as not being undefeated. Nearly every single champion in the UFC has close fights or controversial fights. But he is undefeated. Obviously, I'm not counting the disqualification loss because it was a fight that he was dominating. So, skill-wise, he's never been beaten in the octagon before. He's dominated most of his opponents. It was only towards the end of his career where he started to slow down. And even his recent fight against Cyril Gane, he absolutely dominated him. So, nearly every fight is domination. And he beat 3 generations of champions. He beat the generation before him, he beat his own generation, and now he's going to beat in Cyril Gane to beat the future generation of fighters. On top of that, he's the youngest champion in the UFC. He's got the record for being the youngest champion in the UFC, winning the belt at 23 years old. He's been a champion in 2 weight classes and he's got 13 title defenses. You look at that and it's hard to say that he's not the greatest of all time. But he took steroids. That's the simple thing. The one thing that's stopping people from classing Jones as the GOAT is the fact that he has taken steroids, and the thing that makes it worse is it wasn't just one time. He's took steroids on multiple occasions as well. So although a lot of you might think that Jones is the GOAT, I mean, I did a community poll where I said who you think the greatest of all time is, and Jones won it, but he has taken steroids on multiple occasions. It wasn't just once, and that's for me why a lot of people think he can't be the greatest of all time, simply for the fact that he has cheated before. Personally, I do think he is the greatest of all time, but because he's taken steroids on multiple occasions, he can't really be classed as the greatest of all time, even though he's got so many records, so many achievements to his name. But yeah, that's the one reason why people will never let Jones be the GOAT, because he did take steroids. So now a lot of you are going to be thinking, alright, surely there's got to be a fighter that was undefeated and got all these defenses and all these achievements that never took steroids. And I guess you're right, because there's GSP. GSP beat everyone he faced, and I know you're going to be like, no he didn't, he's got a couple of losses. The people that he lost to, he ended up beating in the future. So technically everyone he faced he has beaten, but he isn't undefeated. He did get a belt in 2 weight classes, like Jones obviously was the welterweight champ, then moved up a few years to fight Michael Bisping for the middleweight belt. He's a clean athlete, right? He's never taken steroids. We can't use the steroid argument because, listen, he's taken steroids in his career. How can he be the greatest of all time if he's never taken steroids? I mean, no. How can he not be the greatest of all time if he's a completely clean athlete and he's pretty much done all of these achievements, and he's got 9 title defenses? Which again, if you get anything over 5 title defenses, you've got to be close to the GOAT list, or at least in the top 15. And to get 9. It's only a handful of fighters have done that, so you've got to give it to GSP. So surely you look at this and you're like, how is GSP not the greatest of all time? Well, first of all, he has lost before. Some people will argue that unless you're undefeated and you've never lost a fight in your career, you can't be undefeated. And by the way, I'm not saying this is my personal opinion. The text in red, the critiques, I'm not saying that's why he isn't the greatest of all time or can't be registered. This is just what a lot of people want to say. Personally, I don't think losing necessarily means you're not the greatest of all time, because it could be a way to learn. And on top of that, he has beaten everyone he's lost to, but he has lost before, and he's even been finished. It's not just that he's lost a close decision. He has literally been finished before. And I know a lot of you are going to be thinking, surely if he's the greatest of all time, he can't be finished in a fight. But okay, let's talk about a fighter that's clean and has never lost a fight in his life. Surely now we're onto something, right? Well, that brings us to Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's undefeated. Never lost a fight in his life, okay? He's never been finished. He's had close fights like the one with Gleison Tibau, but he's never lost a fight. He dominated most opponents. It wasn't like he was getting really, really close decisions. He was pretty much dominating every single person he stepped in the octagon with. And he's the greatest lightweight of all time. Whether you want to admit it or not, some people won't, but I'm going to give him respect. For me, Khabib is the greatest lightweight of all time. What he's achieved in the lightweight, the way he dominated all the top opponents at the time, maybe they weren't stylistically great matchups, but he is the greatest lightweight, and again, he's a clean athlete. He's never popped for steroids. So you look at Khabib, listen, undefeated, never lost a fight, never taken steroids, never been finished or anything like that, dominated the division. So surely Khabib Nurmagomedov has to be the greatest of all time. And that's why you look at his title defenses. We go back to people like GSP, 9, Jones, 13, Khabib, 3. You can't really be the greatest of all time. And for me, being the greatest of all time is based on achievements. And when you look back at Khabib Nurmagomedov's career and, you know, his title defenses, he's only got 3. Does that make Aljamain Sterling the good? Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got to have more than 3 title defenses. I think Khabib was the best at his time. Don't get me wrong, I think he was definitely the best. But that doesn't make you the greatest. There's a clear difference between the greatest and the best. You know, 3 title defenses, and the fact that he retired too early. On top of that, you can add the fact that he never went to a different weight class. He only ever stayed in the lightweight division. He retired like way too early, and I understand because his dad passed away and he didn't want to fight if his dad wasn't there, so fair play. But when it comes to achievements, he doesn't have the same achievements as a lot of these other fighters do. So for me, that's a lot. I mean, not for me, but for the people that want to call Khabib the GOAT, that is the one critique you can give him. He has retired too early, and he has only got 3 title defenses. Another fighter on this list, another one that people want to throw in the GOAT conversation. I've heard a lot of people say that this guy should be the GOAT, or at least a top 3. I think he should be top 3. Demetrius Johnson, 11 title defenses again. Incredible amount of defenses. I mean, we praised GSP for having 9. Demetrius Johnson 11. That's some of the most in the UFC. 11 is incredible, and he absolutely dominated the flyweight division. He's the greatest flyweight of all time, whether you want to admit it or not. He is the greatest flyweight. There's no one that the fact that there's no one that even comes close. Like, it isn't like he's really close to being the second greatest flyweight. He's not close. He's 100% the greatest flyweight of all time. And again, 11 defenses. You've already got to be in the GOAT conversation. Again, clean athlete. Never taken steroids, and the fact that he's still winning today, I know that's in a different promotion, that's in ONE FC, but he's still winning today, winning fights, still active today, still, you know, still getting these wins. So you add all these together and you look at Demetrius Johnson, and he's got to be up there. I mean, to have 11 title defenses and all this, but the thing about Demetrius Johnson, just like GSP, he has lost 3 times, and a lot of these MMA fans, they want to say, hey, listen, if you're not undefeated, you can't be the champ. Simple as that. If you're not undefeated, not the champ, you can't be the GOAT. If you're not undefeated, you can't be the GOAT. And GSP just not Jimmy. What am I on about? Demetrius Johnson simply isn't undefeated. He's lost 3 times, and unlike GSP, he hasn't been able to get back all of those losses. Obviously, he's beaten Henry Cejudo and then lost to him, but not every single one of the people he lost to ended up beating. And again, he was only the champion in 1 weight class, and I know he's technically, if you're doing it by individual pounds, he's been a champion 2 weight classes because of ONE FC, but in the UFC, he was only ever champion 1 weight class. So that's the main critique you can give Demetrius Johnson. And a lot of the old school fans are going to say, what about Anderson Silva? I'm even going to include him in this list. I mean, first of all, I didn't even mention it on this list, but he is the winning streak record in the UFC. Kamaru Usman nearly got it, but then Leon Edwards had to send him to the Shadow Realm. But Anderson Silva currently holds the record for the longest winning streak, and he was one of the most dominating, one of the most dominant fighters in his prime. Prime Anderson Silva, a lot of people couldn't even come close to overtaking that. Anderson Silva in his prime, he was playing with his food. I said this, he was ahead of his time. It looked like he was on a completely different level. It looked like he was only putting about 5% effort into his fights, and he still was starching people like it was nothing. He looked like he was a completely different type of fighter. 10 title defenses as well. You know, that's an insane achievement. Like I said before, anything over 5 or 6 defenses is extremely impressive. And obviously, he's the middleweight GOAT. It's not Israel Adesanya. Anyone who says Israel Adesanya has clearly never watched a UFC fight previous to 2019. So, all of these achievements, but he's lost 11 times. There's people having a go at GSP for losing twice when he got those wins back in the future. This guy's lost 11 times. Yes, he might have stayed around longer than he should have. Yes, it was towards the end of his career where he lost a majority of these fights. One of them was a leg break as well, but 11 times. You can't lose 11 times and call yourself the greatest of all time, because you're simply not the greatest of all time. For me, the greatest of all time means you have to actually be the greatest of all time. You have to be the greatest in your entire career, just like Jon Jones. And Anderson Silva wasn't. He was only great in his era. When the new generation came in, he wasn't better than them, and that's why he went on a massive losing streak. And on top of that, he has taken steroids. You know, you can use the steroid argument, whatever you want to use. he has taken steroids. So for me, Anderson Silva, he can't be the greatest of all time, but that's my list. I mean, those are my reasons. Those are my personal reasons why we don't have a definite UFC GOAT. Let me know who you think the GOAT is, but yeah, thank you for watching.